Right then, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of the RGM Experience podcast, sponsored by the beautiful people at Scott's Menswear. And we're joined today by Tom and Fran from Red Rum Club. Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's we're actually recording this podcast the day after England's 4-0 win over the Ukraine, and it's quite early in the morning. And you had a gig in Manchester last night as well, didn't you, guys? So really appreciate, working through everything and having a chat with us this morning.
No worries. I'm all right. It's Tom that's suffering.
Yeah. Well, you look all right, mate. What did you get up to then after? Because you were playing Manchester last night, weren't you, for this feeling and Scott's at Breadshed, was it?
Yeah, Breadshed.
Yeah. How was it?
It was acoustic, so we were a bit laid back, but
yeah,
the night was the opposite.
Sure.
So yeah, it was good. It was good to be back. It felt like the first time it was a room full of people, to be honest. It was tables and a limited capacity, but it felt like it was kind of getting back to normal, which is good.
Yeah, it's great. How did you find it, Fran?
Yeah, it felt strange. It felt like because we hadn't done it for so long, I felt like I was someone who was pretending to be in Red Rum Club. I felt like a Red Rum Club covers band. You sort of forget, you just forget some of the, you forget the routine of the day, and then even when you're on stage, it's a little bit like, oh yeah, we used to do this thing, and we used to say, it just felt a bit weird because it's been so long. But I think by the third, fourth song, I was sort of back in the zone.
Sure, I can imagine, because it's been a hard time for the creative industry and everybody really, and I suppose we need to be mindful of. Well, I don't know what it was like in a football crowd, but when there's big gatherings again, when we start gigging, I'm going to come to, you're playing Tramlines, which I'm going to be attending as well. You got a big, massive gig coming up and a third album. We'll get to all that in a bit, but I suppose, the first time that people are back on stage and they're around big crowds, it can be quite of a daunting experience for some that we need to be mindful of, I think.
Yeah, and it's sort of, everyone's got their own view on the events, and everyone sort of has a different experience over the past couple of months, or the last year, 18 months. So I think it is a little bit sort of, you haven't seen a friend for ages, and you don't know whether it's like that, but for worldwide, so you don't know whether people are the same people they were beforehand, and then that with the added pressure of the whole COVID thing, and people going out just worrying whether they're going to upset someone just for just shaking their hands or whatever. It's a little bit. It does feel that tension in the air, but I think music and football, it feels like they're the two things that I think people have missed. So they're willing to. That'll bring people together. I think. It felt like that last night. You know what I mean? It felt like everyone's guards were down, and everyone was there for a good night.
Yeah. Sure. And how did you find it, Tom? Did you just get straight into it, or a little bit of anxiety?
It was exciting. I remember dawned on me it was after, because we've been so busy as a band still, doing other band things in the studio and practicing and stuff. When I was about to go on stage, I was like, oh, this is actually the first time we played some of these songs as well, from the second album. It's the first time we played them in front of people. And it was acoustic, but it still felt like
yeah.
But it go down okay.
Sure. Well, let's go back a little bit. So, how did you all get into music? What kicked off that passion inside you to think, fuck it, I'm going to be in a band?
I was always a football lad. I mean, I still am in that, but most of my spare time was taken up with football. So after school, I go and play. During school, I play. On the weekends, I play Saturday, Sunday. And but I got to my teenage years, and I had a bit of an injury as when I was 9, and I had to have 2 years off. I had a sort of operation and stuff, and then I just found a different passion. So in the meantime, I was always into music. My mum's side of the family, they're all musical, and I got a guitar. I just asked for a guitar for Christmas. Because I'd seen my uncle playing it and stuff like that. I think I went to a house party and my uncle was playing it, and he was the life and soul of the party, and I was like, I want to do that. And then I got a guitar for Christmas, and because I did, Tom did, didn't you? I remember telling Tom, and Tom was like, oh, I'll get one as well then.
No, I got one. And then when it was like, because I was into the footy as well when I was young, and then Mum got one for Christmas, and I was like, "Oh, thanks." And I was like a bit like, "I don't play guitar." I didn't touch it for years. Our older cousin had learned it as well, and then I just dived right in then, and we just kind of like delved into it.
It was mainly Esperantos, wasn't it, Tom?
Yeah, that was. I played our first gigs and stuff as like a open mic, like 2-piece. Me and Fran. We were like 14. I think I was 14. You were 16 or something. Or were you younger?
No, I think that was about age,
young. And then we were playing.
Did you all know each other from school and that? Then everybody in the band.
Well, we sort of did like. Me and Tom were cousins, and I'd say we just spend the weekends together when we weren't playing footy. We'd be jamming along or whatever in each other's houses, and then we just sort of got in a circle in like the north of Liverpool in the bars and clubs and stuff. And we started to meet lads around our similar age who were in the school down the road or whatever. And then we just become mates from that sort of little. There was just like a little circuit where we'd all go play a different bar every weekend, and then Mike just invited us all around and said, "Come on, let's make a new band." And then when we kicked into our first like cover song, it was better than anything we'd experienced before in our other bands. And we were like, "Wow, that's like." And I think Mike had done it on purpose. I think Mike had scouted people. I think Mike had like when like you can you're this, you're that, you're this, and got the best out of each of the bands. And then when we kicked in, it was like it was Pyro by Kings Leon, and it was a different level, like.
Actually, what band rehearsal either. He invited Fran and like a few of the lads, and I was meant to be going out that night. And I think going out like drinking in like the woods or something, and the start was pissing down. So I was like, Fran, can I come with you tonight? And he was like, "You'll have to ask Mike. He's invited me." And I asked Mike, and then that became a 5-piece. Then I just turned up and there was 3 other lads there. Like, these are starting a band and I'm not meant to be in it. And then
lost you in there.
Yeah, and then so I kind of wheedled my way in.
Sure, mate. Tom, it's cutting off a little bit, mate. Is there any way to get a little bit closer to your router or anything like that? But is that okay? It just keeps cutting off a little bit just for you, mate. Cheers. If possible, mate. No worries. It's it's the internet. It's the bane of everybody's life. Cheers, mate. Right, friend. So, did you want to tell us something about each band member that you think us?
No.
Yeah, something surprising, really. Something that you think, something that you think would surprise us, or what people might not know about Red Rum Club and the members.
What people might not know. Well, we were in a band before Joe. It's called Small Print.
Yeah.
And back in them days, it was just a case of it. I mean, we didn't realise it, but we had the stabilisers on. We were practicing. It was all good. It was good fun, but it was making us the band we are and the musicians we are. And it got to a point where someone was like, I think it was Carl Hunter out the farm, actually.
Oh,
wow. Not many people know this, actually, I think. So Carl Hunter out the farm had good connections, obviously, because his years in the industry. And he recognised us and said, like, "He's a good boy," sort of thing. And our manager, our current manager, it has been to this day, and from day one, he said he got in touch and was like, "Boys, I'm really interested in managing you. So you're quite good in this and that, and I've got a few songs here, and we can write some songs together." But it was actually Carl Hunter that got us our first ever record deal in Park Street.
Wow.
He managed to windle us. He managed to windle us to a day in Park Street Studios and said, come in and do it. And he really was the catalyst. Him and George, our manager, they were the catalyst, because otherwise we'd just be still playing like pubs and that. Probably. I mean, we always wanted to be in the industry, but we didn't know how to be in the industry.
Yeah.
And it was him that was like, "No, go and write some songs, stop playing the Beatles and stop playing Oasis covers and go and write some songs, and then, we'll have a good go at this." And they injected like belief into us of like, "Oh, hang on, these fellas, these seem to know what to do, and these can put us on the right path." You know what I mean?
What do you think they saw in you to spend that time giving you their advice? And they must have seen something in you to to support you that way.
This was a point. Can you hear me now? Is that all right?
Yeah, mate. Thank you.
This was a point where like we'd been a band at this point for like about 3 years maybe, but not really taking it too serious. And then there was a point where we just locked ourselves away for about 18 months and just wrote, kind of found out what we wanted to sound like, and then just wrote as many songs as we could in that kind of ballpark. So when we came out, we kind of had a bit of a identity like within ourselves, and we had like a bit of a sound that like we thought was a bit unique. So I think that's what kind of interested initially.
I think it was also the fact that we were like a big gang of mates, and you can tell that. You know, I think they seen a sort of passion in us that we were playing every weekend. We were always doing something. We were always there, and even at the gigs, you could sort of tell on stage that we were just like, we were doing it for the love of us. It wasn't we were going there for a payday. It wasn't the fact that we were just going to do it because it was like, yeah, let's just go and play because we enjoy playing. And I think that was the first thing that sort of rubbed off on them. And then we probably they realised we were all pretty good lads and pretty good musicians. So we you know, when we started writing, we come up with something, and then that was some it was born. You know what I mean? That was something that was it was a product then, I think. You know what I mean?
A lot of bands are very eager just to get out there and just play. Even like I'm talking before the pandemic, and a lot of bands can be guilty of being a little bit, particularly when they're really passionate about it. Fair enough if you're into it and you just want to play to your mates and just have a good time, whatever. But when you're serious about making it for a career, you still see some bands going out and playing the song that they wrote last week live, thinking that's gonna help them, when in theory, you know, these songs and these ideas need nurturing to make them the best they can be. And I really see that from you guys, that there's more thought behind the band. There's a process that goes on. It feels like behind the scenes before you're on stage, and it feels like it's a well thought out, planned thing. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I think so. It's just the eagerness of youth, isn't it? I think we were sort of like that, to be honest. We would always just like, wouldn't we just throw songs in here and there, and we'd record something in the back room somewhere, and then just think that was okay. And but I think them bands just need George Wilson. You know, like our manager was like, "Whoa, you know, hold your horses, go and do it right." Go, you know, so when it does come out, it's better than stop comparing yourselves to like your mate's band or the next band in the next bar or the band on before you. Compare yourself to the top artists, because that's the only way you'll get there and compete with them. There needs to be an actual thing about it. You know what I mean? Actual process about these things. Don't just be going out and. But it is hard, you know, when you're so proud and so passionate of something that you've done and you want to go and show it. It is hard. It just needs someone. It just needs someone with a bit of now.
When I were in a band 10 years ago, that's what we did. And me just looking back, that's how I've learned, and that's how I pass on knowledge to these young bands that are really eager. I've even started managing a band now that are just, you know, pre-pandemic, they just wanted to go out with the mates and just have a drink and just record something really quick and get it out, just so it feels like they're doing stuff. But you've just got to calm them down, you know, give them advice, tell them, give them a plan, and help them see how much of an advantage that will be for them moving forward, which you know, it's definitely working for you guys having that plan. And you know, I don't really know you personally or anything like that, but I see it from your socials and that kind of stuff, and I see it from the band's presentation that there's a plan there, and it's a professional plan, and it looks a lot more professional than, you know, some of the professional bands you see as well sometimes. Yeah,
we've only got that because we've done it. We're on third album cycle now, we know, and even the first album, we were a bit eager and we were a bit sort of maybe we're a little bit unprepared, but that might have been added to the novelty of it. You know what I mean? It sometimes it can be good. You know, people who just throw things on Twitter. You know, there's people who go viral just for doing a cover on Twitter, and it blows up. But from our point of view, I don't think we want to take that risk, to be honest.
Yeah, well, the album thing's interesting. You're on your third album, which is a massive undertaking to have that much content out there. A lot of bands are shying away from albums these days. They're just bringing singles out every 3 or 4 months, just keeping themselves ticking over because they feel just from people that I've spoken to, they can feel by bringing an album out, it can sometimes be a lot of work for not much gain. I know you've got a team behind you and that kind of stuff, and through Modern Sky and through a team. But what was the plan with releasing albums? What
we just thought it was like,
yeah,
it actually did the opposite for us. It really helped us. We live in like a Netflix kind of binge age, don't we? I feel like if we release a body of work and just go into all of it. And that's what we found was like the most advantageous to us, because like looking for a new episode or something nowadays, they have to like have it all now, so we just give it to them.
Right, that's interesting.
Yeah, and that's sort of that's the way we feel like we will benefit. Or the thing that we've got over our sort of competition or anyone else is we're always on it. We're 24/7. I mean, Tom's always writing songs and always got ideas. Me, Mike, Joe, we're always there, sort of adding to these ideas that Tom comes up with, and we sort of have took a different like business model in that approach. You know, a lot of people, as you say, are single because they want the biggest bang for the buck. Whereas I think we're sort of playing the long game and just going, no, what we'll do is we'll give them a Netflix series every 12 months or every 18 months, because you know, if they don't like all 10 songs on the album, they're gonna like one. So then in 4 years, they're going to like 4 of our songs. So then in 4 years' time, you'll buy a ticket to the show. And like, you know, it's sort of, we're sort of in it for the long game, because I think we back our talent and back our sort of ability to be able to produce 4, 5, 6, 7 albums, whatever it is.
Brilliant. How do you look back on album 1, Matador, now? How do you look back on the first album in a band compared to where you are now, just about to release your third?
It was quite... did its job. I think it was quite a naive album, but I think it's always meant to be your first one, isn't it? It was quite like scratchy and like more youthful and stuff. Whereas I feel like the second was a stepping. It feels like there's a stepping stone to the third album, which feels like a kind of coming of age kind of record. That's all we kind of get from it. But we still look back fondly on Matador, and it does a great job live, and that we love playing the song still. But yeah, it does feel like it feels great, because it feels like it captured how we felt at the time, just like young and full of like beans and like just wanting to get out and like show people these songs.
It's the first time I've heard brass from a band in a long time. I love that.
Well, it sort of fits in with what you were saying about this whole thought process and the plan and it being professional from our point of view. Joe come about because it was an ex-manager of ours was like, listen, boys, the trend in the industry isn't so much bands now, it's this and that. And he said, yeah, you need something to stand out from a crowd. So we went away from that meeting thinking, we need to stand out from a crowd. How do we do it? We're all raging, all fuming, to be honest. But then it was a conscious decision to find something else. And a couple of days later, after that meeting, Mike bumped into Joe, who we went to school with, and Joe was like, I play trumpet, do you want me to come along? He was telling about the bands and all that. He said, I play trumpet, do you want me to come along for a jam? And then a few days later, he come in the room and it was just like not just the cherry on the cake, it was the icing and the everything else. It was just, it sort of brought everything together, and it made us stand out, because if no one knows our name, no one knows our songs, but they go, oh, that band with the trumpet, that's enough. You know what I mean?
Quality. So the first album was brought out. What kind of changed from bringing out the first album, moving into the second album, The Hollow of Hundrum? What kind of developments went on between band members and conversations with management and the label, that kind of stuff? What was the process for you guys moving from the first album into the second one?
I think we just played a lot. We played a lot of big shows, hadn't we, Tom?
It was relentless touring, like with the first one, and then obviously your second album was always to write, because you're so busy playing the first one. It was written and then recorded, and that's when lockdown came in, didn't it, before the singles come out. So that was an album we were releasing through the first lockdown. That was probably the biggest society shift like for us, but like the team's always been the same. The writing process was a bit was quite similar to the first. To be honest, I'd bring something in and we'd all add meat to the bones. And we didn't want to steer too clear from the sound of the first record. We still wanted that like spaghetti western kind of mariachi vibe, but then we kind of took it in different directions, like slightly pulled it away.
Where did the like slightly like bull ringy type Spanishy sound, where did that stem from?
Don't know.
I think it was the trumpet kind of.
Yeah.
It was, we got like we knew we wanted this kind of like Tarantino sound, like with the first record. And then as soon as the trumpet come in, we kind of we were like, let's just come in. Let's just like as many.
Had you named the album by then? Had you named the album Matador by then? Did you know it were going to be called that? But even before
that was the first song. That was the first song. I think that's our like oldest song. I think it was like first written. So we didn't know we were going to call it that, but it felt right. Yeah. To name it that.
Okay.
But the transition from like Matador to Hollow Humdrum, I always think in my head is we were writing Matador with the view of playing in our local, in the Zanzibar round the corner, or going to Sheffield and playing a basement somewhere, or going to London and playing a 200 cap room. And so I think we were right. That was our sort of idea of, get the room sweaty, get it scratchy, get lots of energy. But through releasing Matador, after that, we went and played lots of festivals and bigger rooms and bigger stages, and then I think trying to when we were writing and producing Hollow Humdrum, we just tried to make it a little bit bigger. I think we moved away from the scratchy guitars and the indie sound a little bit, and tried to make it a bit more full-bodied and a bit more, have a bit of a string section, a bit of a this and a bit of a that, just something that was big and sort of a little bit more mainstream, probably. Yeah. To be honest.
So it's interesting.
It was like the shows were growing, so we felt like, and we knew what worked as a band, what kind of songs worked. So we were going for that kind of euphoric, like long, feel good energy kind of thing. But we also had we felt like we could be a bit self-indulgent on some tracks, have a few slowies in there as well. So that's what kind of the second album kind of birthed into that.
Sure. So you were interested. You mentioned, scratching around other cities and playing basements and that kind of stuff. When I'm trying to advise bands, all they want to do is like trying to take over their home city first. Which the main thing that I say to them when they tell me that is, you don't know that the people that are going to love your music are in your home city. There's a big world out there, and there's loads of tools to get your music out there throughout the world. So don't think of your home city as the place where it's going to happen for you, because there's a massive chance that that's not going to be the case. So how did you, and getting your music out into different cities and playing other cities, because a lot of bands can play the home city too much as well, particularly when they start and they're green and all that kind of stuff. So what was your approach to getting Red Rum clubs out of Liverpool?
We were the same. I think we wanted sell-out show every time in Liverpool. We wanted this, wanted that, but we found that, and we wanted to go on tour. We did want to go on tour. It wasn't like we were reluctant to go and play other cities. But what we found was when we done a lot of hustling in the early days, a lot of like messaging and inboxing, and when we didn't have an agent or not, and we were just like, right, we'll go and play this place to this many people, and yet there's a show there in wherever we were going, and we'd go and just do it. But what we found was the people in Liverpool who maybe wouldn't have bought your tickets, or were like sort of half aware of you, and were like, they were fans, but they weren't sort of die-hard fans. They were sort of just passive listening. When you go on tour, when you go away, so like if we went and played the show in London and went and played the show in Manchester and Sheffield and went up to Glasgow and come back, those fans would feel like Liverpool took us a little bit more seriously, and we're like, oh, well then boys, how was the tour? And it felt like we were like our hard work and our like long nights driving up to Scotland and all that. That was rewarded in their sort of, well, in boys, you sort of felt like we were representing them a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Like so they took you more seriously. You come back and they were like, yeah, I'll go. I'll buy a ticket. When's the next one? Sort of thing. So I think you've got to as I say, it's probably that saying, isn't it? You speculate to accumulate. You've got to just go out there and play to empty rooms in Glasgow and come back, and then the people in Liverpool won't know you've played to an empty room, but they'll just see that you've been away in Glasgow and you've been representing Liverpool or Liverpool bands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
Territorial. But when we started selling some tickets around the country, it was like people were kind of like it wasn't like a jealousy, but it was like they're Liverpool lads, like when we don't back them. Do you know what I mean? So when we come back from a tour and we were like coming to our shows because like they'd seen videos of like Londoners dancing to our tunes or like from Southern, they kind of want to get behind their own band. So that was quite interesting as well.
Oh, brilliant. So yeah, it's fascinating. So I'm managing a band called Sinclair in Manchester, and they're really green. They've got a lot to learn, and they need to work harder, which is all stuff that we're working on. But when I tell them to look for inspiration on a band that works hard online, I always tell them to check out what you guys are doing, because I just think it's first class. The amount of engagement you're getting on your socials and the amount of hard work that you're doing on there just looks great. And you're branding each album. So, you know, Matador was all black with the circle around the logo, that kind of stuff. Second album, yellow squares, it was all branded. You knew that it was a Red Rum Club. And now you're doing it again for the third album as well. Where did all that come from? Was that advice that you were given, or is that something that you wanted to do yourself?
That's probably something we enjoyed the most, to be honest. Isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, it's like we're big on like the aesthetic of an album. I find it really important. Like in all my favorite bands and all my favorite records, I love the way the album had its own kind of world, and then the band kind of live in that world for that campaign. Something to do next time. I feel like that's something that keeps it kind of fresh as well. If it was like, I think it'd get a bit like monotonous if it just stayed the same the whole time. But we find that we can just dip in and out of like this kind of aesthetic, and we all dress like this thing. So like, it's not too wild. I don't think we go full like David Bowie on it or not. But
it just looks like you're having a lot of fun, which I think people really enjoy watching.
That's something that recently we thought we may as well, like, we were always a bit reluctant because all our favourite bands were like cool bands. We were like, oh yeah, you've got to be cool, you've got to look good. But really, I think the coolest thing to do is just to have, because that comes across, and it's the most like relatable thing to do.
Yeah, there's too many bands looking mardy with a leather jacket on stood against a wall, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that. You could do that one time out of 10, can't you? But the other 9, you've got to make.
Yeah.
You've got to. I mean, none of us are models, are we? But none of us are. So we've got to be, got to at least do something, make them laugh, even if you don't make them.
That's another sign that we back our music though as well. Do that if your music was like jokey or funny or quirky. I'd probably do the opposite. But because the music is and we take it seriously, we can kind of be a bit lax with how we treat ourselves.
Yeah, no, brilliant. It's great. So the third album's on its way, released on, was it 22nd of October? And you've got a single coming out on the 4th of August as well. So just talk us through the build up to the new album and how it's all feeling at the minute then.
I don't know how I feel about it. It's very early days.
Yeah.
We're living in a very different world than this time. We don't know what to expect. We know we're going to get back on the road sometime soon.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether that'll come in time to fully experience the whole thing. As I said, we've already got a single out, and we've got the second single coming out on the 4th of August. But hopefully there'll be shows back then. But I feel like this album is the album that will make people realise that we're dead good.
Yeah.
As for the music, like I think this is everyone's favourite album in the band, and like in the people who we showed it to as being like it's a step up, like and I like we all feel the same. It's definitely a coming of age kind of album. It's not as in your face as the first two, because I listened to the first two back to back, just like writing this one, and it was like I think felt like we needed to give the listener a bit of a break, like, because it's a bit like all bangers in your face, and you're like, what was that when it's finished? So this one's got a bit more up and down, and like a bit more dynamics to it.
Well, I've already pre-saved it. I've pre-saved it, lads, and you can pre-save it now. I'll put a link to pre-save it, as part of this podcast in the description, guys. So if you're listening to it on YouTube or wherever you're listening to it, click on the link and save yourself this new album, because I'm looking forward to it, lads.
Nice one, Carl.
So you've got Tramlines coming up. Tramlines is happening. The festival is happening, guys. It's happening as we speak today. It's happening in 2 or 3 weeks. Sheffield, where I'm from. Have you ever? I presume you've played the Fringe for Tramlines before. We've played
Tramlines. Yeah. It feels like we played the last 10 years or something. Sheffield was our second city. We had a few contacts when we first started out. We had a few contacts in Sheffield.
Yeah.
And we always used to get, and it was probably the first time we sold a show outside of Liverpool. We played Tramlines every year. There was a year where we had 5 gigs in 2 days at Tramlines Fringe festivals when it was in the city.
Yeah.
We played it last year, 2019. We headlined This Feeling stage, or the library stage.
But so that was inside the main. That was inside the main.
Yeah.
Bit. Right. Okay.
Yeah, and we clashed with Two Door Cinema Club. We thought no one would come, but there was about 4,000 people there. It was madness. It was great.
But this year you're playing T'other Stage, which is the main big tent away from the main stage, and you're supporting Slow Readers Club, Jake Bug,
Sophie Ellis-Bextor.
Sophie Ellis-Bextor, yeah. How much are you looking forward to getting back on a big stage again and just fucking having it?
I feel like that's going to be emotional, because that'll be the first one back, and we're on the first day, and we're probably going to be one of the first bands on as well, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
As in, I think it's going to be a good one, innit?
Yeah. We'll have to be the icebreaker, yeah. I think we'll have to talk people through it and, teach them how to be at a gig and how to mosh again and stuff like that.
Well, that stage, just so you know, I watched a few last year at the main festival, and it's a massive fucking stage, that one, lads. You're going to love it.
We watched the Clean Cut Kids were on.
Yeah.
Mates of ours, they were on. Did you watch them, Tom? And Sea Monsters, that stage?
Yeah, they're from Sheffield. All right, so you still got that, because Sea Monsters were part of the This Feeling family as well, weren't they? So
yeah,
how's that community kept together through the, I don't like talking about the pandemic anymore, but through the last year? I just want to move forward with it all. How's that community stuck together?
Very, very well, to be honest. I mean, it just shows you how genuine and passionate that whole scene and that everyone involved in that scene it is. Yeah. If you just look at, last night we played a show to a sellout room. Yeah. Granted, it was seated and stuff like that, but they've done that right the way through the Euros. They've had the Lightning Seeds on, and they've had they've had 3 bands a night for every Young game, and then put the Younger game on live. They've made the extra effort to keep bands busy and get bands, still back on the stage. So they did the vinyl as well. They do a big vinyl announcement each year as well. They offer so much support to
the
compilation discs and that.
Yeah, it just looks great.
And then they've done we were involved in the All Together Now cover, which we did, and the amount of people involved in that, the amount of not just like bands, but like the actual people in the industry. So our record label, for example, they sort of got involved and stuff, and it got to a point where it felt like they were the only thing in the industry that was moving.
Yeah,
it felt like the whole This Feeling and the Scots and the Modern Sky, because we were obviously involved in Modern Sky.
Yeah,
it felt like they were the only ones carrying on doing things at times, and a lot. Like you just got to be grateful for that they exist.
Sure. So we move forward. It looks like we're all getting back to normal again. The big gigs are starting to happen. The big, massive third album's on its way. I'm just going to leave it with, guys, just click the pre-link, order the album, have a listen through the backlog if you've got some spare time and all. Just embrace Red Rum Club in 2021. And I think that's all right, isn't it, for a little bit of promo for you? I don't know what more to say there, guys.
Couldn't have said it better.
Is there anything that you guys just want to finish off with?
I don't know, Tom. You're the wordsmith.
our new single has just
Yes.
come out. It's going to be called Vibrate.
Right.
Stream that. That'd
Stream
be
it.
lovely.
Jump on the socials on Red. Just enjoy the socials on there. And thanks, guys. Really appreciate you joining us today. And just good luck with everything, lads.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you very much.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you.
Thank you.